Any issues? Good morning. Yes, we have detailed diagrams in the tube. So you have to jump between that. That's your sort of overall visual idea you need to have. Then how did we practice the life cycle? By drawing our small short note, right? Sort of a small mind map. Okay. So I'm going to decide which one is the best. Someone, anyone who was there last week? Any volunteers to show me your note? Anyone who did it colorful? Come on. This is good, right? But microscopic handwriting, but good management of space, right? Put a pen online people. So at home, you are supposed to have, if you can, an A3 paper, right? So my plan was to have it all in one paper, and on the other side, we can complete it within today. So that's your small note. No need to write down whatever's there in the resource book again. ඒක තේරෙනවනේ. Resource book is short and sweet enough. Okay. So anyone who needs more paper? Adore. Last week කොල ඉවරයි. All right. So that's the third thing that we are doing. Plant life cycles was the first thing, resource book. Second thing, the tute. Third thing, your own sort of mind map, right? මේක නැති කරගන්න එපා, right? Hands up, කාටද? Papers? Let me. Can you take one and pass? Online people, you are doing, following it all nicely at home, right? I hope so. Okay. So before we start with the remaining part that we have to do today, I think better do a bit of revision, no? Right? So online people, was there issue with the website today? The link was not working? Let me know. Was there an issue? All right. Yes or no? Okay. Right. Everyone got it? Yes. Right. So let's do a bit of recap of what happened last week. Right. Um, People, I'll start screen sharing, so you will be able to see. Right. Brightness value. Hi, people. Can you hear me and see me? Yes, can you see the screen? Okay, so what happened? We started talking about evolution, right? So, what's the first thing you need to know? The closest relative to the modern green plants we have are from different kingdom. What's the different kingdom? From kingdom Protista. Out of protists, who is the closest relative to the modern plants, modern green plants? Right? Green algae, chlorophytes. Right? What are the similarities between chlorophytes and modern plants? They both had chlorophyll A and B, photosynthetic pigments. What else? They had a cell wall composed of cellulose mainly. What else? They had the same storage form of, let's say, storage sugar. I mean, storage food, sorry. Right? But that was starch. Chlorophytes or green algae and modern plants both store starch. So, those are some evidences that suggest us that modern plants evolved from green algae. Right? So you know the evolutionary timeline, how plants colonize land, blah blah. Timeline, right? There are some texts which are the most basic plants didn't even have transport scale maximum like they evolved rescue system. So they became rescue plants are seeds. They are all this concept of other seed that deeply cover is seed. They finally seed plants. It's who takes as the next seed now these both which have okay. No, excuse me, not first. I am voice is breaking. It's not clear. My voice keeps breaking.
Recording progress.
Is the video lagging? Or it's just my voice? I don't think so. The internet is good. Still lagging? What do you mean? Are you hearing too or lag? Okay, let's continue. Right, clear up now. Right? Evolutionary trend in a nutshell. ඔක්කොතමයි වෙන්නේ. Okay. So moving on, we started to talk about the most basic form of plants that we. So this is sort of the ancestral tree. How different algae came to the closest plant through dual evolution. Right? So this is the concept you need to know under plant reproduction. All land plants undergo what we call as alteration of generations. What do you mean by that? There are two morphologically different generations. What do you mean by morphologically different? By external appearance, you can differentiate. මෙයා තමයි මේ generation. This generation is this. Yes. What are the generations? Diploid, fluid, sporophyte. Diploid Oocyte produces spore. Right? Spores develop into the next generation is called gametophase haploid half. Because this it was meiosis, ne? Meiosis again half the number of DNA. Then the gametophytes produce gametes by mitosis. Why? Because they are already haploid. Ne? half run. So they are already in. So they are going to get another gamete from maybe another plant, and you are going to have a fertilization, and you're going to get a diploid zygote. First single cell diploid one, then it's going to going to divide by mitosis to get this nice complex sporophyte again. Okay, simply put, right? And both this sporophyte and this gametophyte has their own reproductive organs. Neither. What do you call the reproductive organs of the sporophyte? Yeah, yeah. What are the reproductive organs? Gametophyte, gamete, and jar. Neither. So you have two gametes, male, let's say. Sometimes it's same right? They are male and female. Started and male and female. What do you call male reproductive organs? Three. There will be a argument. And we have reservoir. Argument is egg. Right? Okay, so we can go on to the most basic cycle of this sort of gradual evolution, right? You had liverworts, phylum Hepatophyta, නේද? මතකයිද? Phylum Hepatophyta, liverworts, then Mossus Pogonatum වගේ, right? Hornworts, Anthocerophyta. Then you got your Lycophyta, Monilophytes කියන එක ඔයගලගේ syllabus එකේ නෑ. Then we are going to talk about these two today. Gymnosperms and angiosperms. Seed හදන අය. Okay. Right. So then we came to the very first life cycle that we have to talk about. Pogonatum. Right? Take out your whatever the map we drew last week. So you call it welcome into this life cycle. Still there's an issue. Yeah? Still there's an issue. Online people? Sometimes. Hold on, I'll select a different mic. Or maybe a signal issue, no? It's distance. Okay. Let's try this one. Can you hear now? Right. So, phylum Bryophyta or seedless non-vascular plants. Right. What's the example that you have in your syllabus? Pogonatum. Ne? Pogonatum. So, Pogonatum, what are the things you need to know? What's the evolutionary trend? We start with the gametophyte as the dominant generation that we can see usually. So, it's like the starting end of evolution. We are going to end up with gametophytes that you couldn't even see with your eye. But at the start, they are the big things, right? They are the dominant generation at the beginning because usually patanga with plants. So therefore, you can see the female gametophyte is dominant, green color. මේ වටාද කියන්නේ මේ යට දෙනවා. Rhizoids. They are not roots. තාම roots හම්බුන්නේ නැහැ. Roots unlock කරලා නැහැ තාම. හරි එච්චර game එක ඉස්සරහට ගිහිල්ලා නැහැ. Right? Roots නැහැ තාම. These are rhizoids. Okay? So female gametophyte innone. Who is here on top of the female gametophyte? That is the sporophyte. Very reduced. Right? Completely dependent on the gametophyte. There are three parts to it as the foot, seta and the capsule. So let's follow the sporophyte. Sporophyte has reproductive organs called sporangia. Sporangia produce spores by meiosis. Ne? So you can see spores are being released. Spores are going to go through a germinating stage that is called the protonema. Protonema කියලා ඔයගොල්ලන්ගේ resource එකේ තියෙන. Right? So it's going to go through a bud and it's going to produce the male gametophyte, which is going to have reproductive organs called antheridia. Antheridia, you are going to get a lot of sperm. සාමාන්‍ය sperm හදන එක හදනවා ගොඩක්. Right? That's the case with humans, right? Millions of sperms we make. When you come to the female, they are much more conservative. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් එක archegonium එකක එක egg එකයි හදන්නේ. Only one egg in one archegonium. Right? So, and the other thing is the egg is sort of always golden rule. What is it? All land plants have internal fertilization. Right? කවදාවත් egg එක එළියට දාන්නේ නැහැ. Egg will be protected. Then what has to happen? Sperm has to come looking for the egg. Ne? Sperm has to swim through external film of water. එළියේ තියෙන වතුර medium එකකින් water medium එකක් through the sperm has to swim. For that, what does the sperm have to have? Flagella. It has to be motile. Ne? So it will swim through external water and go into the archegonium and fertilize the egg. Then you are going to get the two and diploid zygote that's going to divide by mitosis. It's going to be the sporophyte while obtaining nutrient from the gametophyte. Amma bala gannawa wage thamai, right? The female gametophyte is taking care of the sporophyte. Okay. Then it will grow into the sporophyte on top of the gametophyte. Pogonatum life cycle, very simple. Right. Moving on. So these are all about bryophytes. Some examples you have in your resource as well, right? Liverworts or Hepatophyta, right? And these are still Hepatophyta, hornworts, Anthocerophyta, right? These sort of upward projections are given, hornworts, right? So this is another species very closely related to Pogonatum. Can you see the sporophytes growing on top of the gametophyte? Ne? What can you see about them? They are sort of less green color. No, actually we say they are not photosynthetic. Right? You can see they are sort of brown, yellow. So they can't do photosynthesis. So they need to take everything from the female gametophyte. Alright. Right. If you have free time, Campbell then not necessary. Alright. So we move on to the next life cycle. That is what? Nephrolepis pterophyta, phylum Pterophyta. So what are the changes that we got when we jump to this phylum Pterophyta? These are now vascular plants, xylem and phloem කියලා දෙකක් තියෙනවා. But are they the proper xylem and phloem? No. Some things are missing from the proper xylem and phloem. We talked about this last week, right? They have xylem and phloem, but not the full package එක අරගෙන නැහැ තාම. අර ChatGPT එකේ free version එක වගේ. You can still use it, but not the full features, right? Xylem and phloem is there. Okay. So talking about Nephrolepis, it has roots. The roots theory. This is an underground stem, right? ඔය ferns, I tried to look for this fern. හැබැයි ලිඳක් අස්සේ තමයි වගේ පොඩ්ඩක් තමයි හොයන්න වෙන්නේ, right? එහෙම නැත්නම් ඔය මොකක් හරි පොඩි මඩ ඇලක් වගේ දෙපැත්තේ එහෙම තියෙනවා. This Nephrolepis. ගලවලා බලන්න. Okay. So what is their distinctive feature? They have specialized leaves with sporangia. Specialized leaves with sporangia. මොනවද අපි උඩ කියන්නේ? The specialized leaves that bear sporangia. Sporophylls. Phylls කියලා කියන්නේ සාමාන්‍ය leaves. Spores bearing leaves. Sporophylls. So in their leaves, in those leaves, underneath them, you have the sporangia. නේද? Sporangia හැදෙන්නේ as a cluster that is called a sorus. Singular sorus, plural sori. Right? So when the condition, that's such a single sporangium when you zoom in. So when usually in dry conditions and the sporangium is mature, it's going to open. And what is inside? Spores produced by meiosis. Going to come out, it's going to grow into a gametophyte. Very important gametophyte, very special gametophyte. It's a bisexual gametophyte. Both male and female gametangia are found on the same gametophyte, right? How do you describe this gametophyte? What are the adjectives? Macroscopic, green colored, bisexual, photosynthetic, thallus. Okay, you can see all those. No? Thallus එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ it doesn't have proper tissues. It's like a ball of cells, but it's heart shaped, right? You can see some rhizoids are there, and the archegonia are here, and the antheridia on this side. Antheridia produce sperm, archegonia produce egg. They fertilize. You get a zygote, and you can see the gametophyte is nourishing the new sporophyte that is arising from the gametophyte. Nephrolipis. Okay, very commonly questioned life cycle as an essay. Okay, any issues? Still issue? All right. What about the video, the screen I share? Is it lagging also? Okay, moving on. So, what's the next phylum? That phylum is not Selaginella, we don't talk about in your Campbell, but it's in your syllabus, right? So, yeah, I talked about these also. Ne? We got proper leaves, right, which are of two types. There can be small single vein ones called microphylls or large branched veined leaves called megaphylls. Jati dekak තියෙනවා. Right? Yes. So we have to move on to Lycophyta, which is this is how Selaginella looks like, right? Selaginella the most, let's say, unique feature you need to know is what? Strobilus. Like a cone of sporophylls, you have a strobilus, which we'll talk about in the life cycle. Monilophytes is not in your syllabus, right? So Selaginella, we'll talk about using the diagram in your tube. So at this point, your sporophyte is dominant. Gametophyte එක ටිකෙන් ටික පොඩි වේගෙන යනවා, right? So earlier we had in Nephrolipis we had an independent one, photosynthetic, bisexual, heart shape, blah blah එකක් හිටියා. But now it's going to go down further. We are going to get a partially independent එක්කෙනෙක් හම්බෙන්නේ. Partially independent gametophyte. How's that? Right? So we'll talk about the sporophyte. So this is the sporophyte that plant you saw. මෙයාට තමයි Selaginella කියලා කියන්නේ. Right? නිකන් ඔය හරි දැකලා Selaginella කියලා පෙන්නුවොත් what is that? It is a sporophyte, නේ? Right? Gametophyte එක පේන්නේ නැහැ. So the sporophyte has this sort of cone of sporophylls called what? Strobilus. Plural strobili. Strobilus එකට zoom කරාම මෙහෙමයි පේන්නේ. Right? So it has sporangia. These sporangia are going to produce two types of spores. Spores වලින් එන්නේ මොකද්ද? Gametophyte, right? It's going to produce two types of spores. What is guess make a guess. What is the spore that is going to make the female gametophyte? Usually the big one, megaspore. Ne? What is the spore that is going to make the male gametophyte? Microspore. Samane male වැඩි ගණන් ගන්නෑ. Right? So you can see this is a megasporangium. Inside you have megaspores developing. Usually 4 megaspores are produced. Why 4? සාමාන්‍ය meiosis වලින් cells 4යි එන්නේ නේ. daughter cells 4ක්නේ meiosis වලින් එන්නේ, right? නේ? And in the microsporangium you have thousands and thousands of microspores. Okay? So individually let's follow the microspore. මේ තියෙන microspore එක. The microspore is going to grow into the male gametophyte. But that male gametophyte is still surrounded by the wall of the microspore. Or what is that chocolate that you have like a gold wrapping එකේ ඔතල තියෙන මොකක්ද? Ferrero Rocher එකක් වගේ, right? The microspore, right? So it has a chocolate covering, right? Right, outer layer එකක් තියෙනවානේ. That's like the microspore wall. and inside what you have the chocolate වගේ මොනවද තියෙන්නේ? Male gametophyte. Okay, so microspore is like a Ferrero Rocher. එහෙම මතක තියාගන්න. Right? So inside that you're going to have the male gametophyte. Male gametophyte is going to produce sperm. Come to the female one, that's the megaspore. Megaspore is going to produce the female gametophyte inside. Right? So that's a bit like Harry Potter එකේ තියෙන snitch කෙනෙක් කොහොම open වෙන්නේ, right? It has wings or maybe. එහෙම නැත්නම් you can think of it like a tortoise or something, right? So there are going to be some rhizoids, small roots that are coming out from the female gametophyte. Female gametophyte, you can see it came from a bigger megaspore. So the female gametophyte has some stored food. පොඩි කැම ටිකක් දීලා තියෙනවා, lunch එකක් pack කරලා දීලා තියෙනවා ගෙදරින්, right? So the female gametophyte has some stored food, but also මේක පෙන්වන්නේ නැහැ, but it can be a bit photosynthetic. ලාවට කොළ පාට වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So it can make some food via photosynthesis as well, right? So the sperm are going to come and fertilize the eggs produced by the archegonia, and you're going to get fertilization, zygotes, sporophyte. The story continues. ඔය ටිකනේ කරේ, right? Last week life cycle 3යි කරේ. Nothing much. All right. So today we are going to continue. We are going to talk about what are ovules, what are seeds, naked seed plants, gymnosperms, flowering plants, and their diversity. And we are going to do these questions. Yeah. Okay. Right. Clear, ne? Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Let's continue from that point onwards, Zena. Right. So we have to talk about this concept of what's a seed. Right. Seed කියන එකට අපි එමු. The seed comes. So මෙහෙම හිතන්න. Right. So the seed is like a nice packaging for the upcoming zygote. Right. You know, by fertilization of the two gametes, you are going to get a zygote. Right. So a properly fertilized seed is like a packaging built around that zygote, so that zygote has a better chance of survival outside. Cossatek gana, right? It has, we can eat the cossate, right? Because why? It has some starch inside. Pitidino. That starch was designed for us to eat the net. For the jacked embryo that is inside. There's a jacked embryo that is growing inside. That's going to become a nice jack tree later. Right? So the seed concept was developed, or let's say evolved, to give better chance for the embryo to survive. Okay. So that concept you have to understand. Before that, we need to know how a seed is produced, right? So that story we have. Come to page number 91. Online people, come to page number 91. 91, resource book. Page number 91, resource book. Okay. Now not lagging, right? Okay. Let's read. Seed plants. Vascular plants consisting of seeds are called seed plants. Highlight basic definition, right? Vascular plants consisting of seeds are called seed plants. They represent the vast majority of living plant species. Species කියන word එක highlight කරන්න. Majority of species. Because of this, their ability to produce seeds, they have become, let's say, widespread. It's very easy for them to spread because their reproduction is very successful. Seeds are the name. Seed plants can be divided into two groups based on the absence or presence of enclosed chambers in which seeds mature. Right? These enclosed chambers will be given a name later called a fruit. Right? If there's a fruit around the seed, we call it a angiosperm. If the seed is just it's a naked seed or a gymnosperm. So highlight gymnosperms are naked seed as their seeds are not enclosed. Angiosperms are seed plants accommodating all flowering plants. Angiosperm seeds develop inside chambers called ovaries, highlight, which originate within flowers and mature into fruits. So the seeds arise from ovules, right? So what's an ovule? We have to first tackle that definition. So ovule has two states. There's an unfertilized ovule, there's a fertilized ovule, right? Only a fertilized ovule will become a seed. How is that happening? Let's draw an ovule. I have a diagram given in your tute as well. So an ovule is basically a megasporangium. What do you mean by megasporangium? It's the reproductive structure of the, let's say, sporophyte that's going to give rise to what? Megaspores. Neither. So it's the megasporangium. It has a covering usually called the integument. Covering called the integument, right? අපි phone එකට back cover එකක් දාන්න like that. It has a protective covering. So what is the job of the megasporangium? What is the job of the megasporangium? To produce a megaspore, eh? To produce a megaspore, right? By what cell division? By what cell division? Megaspore is megaspore is a haploid structure, නේද? නේ? එන්නේ. So this is a basic unfertilized ovule. It has a protective structure called integument. Right. Integument, and it has a small opening here called micropyle. Micropyle, and this is the megaspore. What is this structure? This is the megasporangium. That is going to produce this megaspore. This is the ovule. So this ovule, so this is an ovule. This ovule is part of what? This ovule is part of what? What is it attached to? මේ පොඩි කැලලක් මම ගන්නේ. What is it attached to? The sporophyte, ne? Right? මෙහින් sporophyte එකේ ඉඳලා තමයි this ovule came. Right? The sporophyte has so many ovules. Right? Imagine a cone, it's a pine cones දැකලා තියෙනවනේ. Right? Pine cones have so many sort of ovules. If you have seen a pine cone like this, it has so many sort of out word projecting things, right? Pine cones. Right. That's an ovule. So the sporophytes have so many ovules like this. What are the three parts of an ovule? It has the megasporangium surrounded by the integument. Megasporangium is going to produce a megaspore. This you know, right? So this is actually not exactly the proper ovule. This is what we call as unfertilized ovule. This is, or you can say, immature ovule. This is not the proper ovule. This is the immature ovule, right? Clear. So what's going to happen to this megaspore inside the? What is going to happen to this megaspore inside this ovule? It's going to grow into what? Female gametophyte. It's going to grow into the female gametophyte. So there's the megaspore. What's going to happen to it? It's going to become the female gametophyte. Female gametophyte is going to produce what? Egg. So there's going to be an egg here. So what I'm going to draw here is what we call as the mature ovule. Proper one. Always remember, a mature ovule has a female gametophyte with an egg nucleus inside, ready to be fertilized. දැන් sperm එකක් දුන්නොත් දැන් fertilize වෙනවා වගේ scene එකේ ඉන්නේ, right? Ready to be fertilized. This one is not ready to be fertilized because why? He is still only having a megaspore, not ready. What do you need to get fertilized? You need the egg, ne? Egg is here, ready පිට ඉන්නවා, right? So but the outside structure is still the same, right? So ovule එක maybe ටිකක් ovule එක it can get a bit bigger, right? But the outside structure is almost more or less the same, right? So what is this? Egg. Just in, no? It came from where? The megaspore. So who is producing the egg? So probably this is the what? Archegonia, right? No need to label that. Biggest difference is what do you have now inside? You have a female gametophyte. Now can you see? The Metrella, then if you take Pogonatum, you had a nice female gametophyte that is outside. No? Now what has happened to the female gametophyte? It is inside an ovule. Sporophyte එකේ හැදෙන චූටි ovule එක ඇතුලේ තමයි female gametophyte. See how reduced it is. When you are coming to sea plants, it's very reduced. Right? You have to split open a seed to see the female gametophyte. Otherwise, you can't see outside. Right? So this is the female gametophyte. Then there's a small change. So I told you this is the megasporangium. Make a megasporangium, right? This megasporangium in the mature ovule is going to change into a nutrient structure. Food source එකක් වෙනවා. Food source. That is called nucellus. Nucellus. I'll draw it, label it in black. It's going to become a food source. For who? For now, female gametophyte. Then a female gametophyte එකට food source, nucellus, which came from what? Megasporangium. I'll draw the what becomes what I'll connect later. So this is the mature ovule, ready to be fertilized. Okay, clear. We'll see what's going to happen to this ovule when a sperm comes. Okay, right. Come back to the resource. Come back to the resource. Ethanol. So we are in page number 92, right? Page number 92. So you can see significant features of seed plants. Significant features of seed plants. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then come to 4. Come to significant feature number 4. Online people following me, right? Come to significant feature number 4. Production of ovules and eggs. ඔතනින් special එක මොකක්ද? Production of ovules. Highlight the word ovules. Let's read. Seed plants are unique in retaining the megasporangium within the parent sporophyte. Gametophyte එකට එළියට යන්න දෙන්නේවත් නැහැ. The gametophyte is not allowed to go. Mecharola, did you see? In Nephrolepis also, gametophyte is outside. Heart shape, thallus. Selaginella, 2 gametophytes are outside. No? From the megaspore, they develop outside. No, Ferrocha wage tibba kiwa, right? But here, the gametophyte is not allowed to go out. It will be protected. The layer of sporophyte tissue called integument envelopes, which protects the megasporangium. Highlight the word integument. Next is a definition. Entire structure containing megasporangium, megaspore, and integument is called an ovule. More accurately, an immature ovule. So you can say unfertilized ovule. Inside each ovule, female gametophytes develop from a megaspore and produces 1 or more eggs. That's what's going to happen here. Neither. Okay. Significant feature 4. Okay. Right. Then let's see what's going to happen. No, read significant feature number 5 also. අපිට දැන් මේල් අය අමතක කරන්න බෑනේ. Production of pollen grain and sperms. Production of pollen grain. That's also a significant feature. Okay. The microspore develops into a pollen grain that consists of a male gametophyte enclosed within the pollen wall. Right. So you have this male gametophytes are found inside a structure called pollen. Inside, what do you have? Inside, you are going to have the male gametophyte inside the pollen grain. So, what is the job of the male gametophyte? To produce sperm. Ne? Male gametophyte is going to produce sperm. That sperm is going to come. That sperm is going to come. Through this opening, micropyle this opening was there not to just receive letters, right? It was for the sperm to come in, right? Sperm is going to come through the micropyle and going to reach this egg, right? So once a sperm and an egg is combined, what are you going to get? You're going to get seed. Seed එකක් හැදෙනවා. Because why? Egg and sperm combination is going to result in fertilization. Fertilization goes to zygote. Zygote produce embryo. Embryo is going to be nicely coated in a package that is called the seed. Okay. So let's finish reading about the pollen. Right. Read. Microspore develops into a pollen grain that consists of a male gametophyte enclosed by the pollen wall. Wall of the pollen is tough as it is made of a polymer called sporopollenin. Highlight sporopollenin. Sporopollenin, which protects the pollen grain during pollination. Pollination කියන එක අහලා තියෙනවද? The pollen We'll talk about this pollination in detail, right? Pollen කියන එක have you heard, right? Pollen grains usually are bees la gange alila. They usually go to other flowers, right? Other plants, pollen. Pollen we'll talk about in detail. When a pollen germinates, it gives rise to a pollen tube that discharges sperm, male gametes into the female gametophyte located within the ovule. Now, pollen tube story. So, then now you have found the obvious problem. Right? So, Ari, the sperm got deposited on this micropyle. Sperm got deposited on this micropyle, but there's some space. It needs to travel to reach the egg. Some distance, no? It has to go through this nucellus කියන layer එක through යන්න ඕනේ. How does it go? It gives a helping structure called the pollen tube. It gets a structure called a pollen tube that is going to help this sperm to reach this egg. Right? Actually, once the sperm is deposited here, it's going to germinate and produce this මෙහෙම shortcut එකක් වගේ, a path that is going to take that sperm to the egg. That is a unique feature that you can only find in seed plants, that is called pollen tube. Pollen tube. Pollen tube එක හරියට අර for the sperm it's like a lift that's going to take it to the egg. Pollen tube. So sperm is going to go into the egg and fertilization is going to happen nicely. Right? Highlight the word pollen tube. Right? Come back to number one then. Significant feature number one, production of seed. දැනුයි ඔයගලන්ට seed කියන එක තේරෙයි. Right? Because that's now only we are going to move on to what is a seed. Right? එකපාරටම පොල්ලෙන් ගහුවාගේ what is a seed කියලා introduce කළා හරියන්නේ නැහැ. Right? So let's read now what is a seed. Right? This is a definition of a seed. A seed consists of an embryo and an endosperm. A seed consists of an embryo and endosperm. Okay, let's keep reading. Endosperm supply food to the embryo. This endosperm is surrounded by the protective coat, which is known as seed coat. When seeds are mature, they can be dispersed through various dispersal methods. So, seed is like a package. Sorry? Sorry? Yeah, no? Yeah. So, there's some part remaining of sperm. Okay, ඒකත් කියමුකෝ එන. Right? Page number 93. There's some remaining part of about pollen. The sperms of seed plants do not require motility as they are carried directly into the eggs by the pollen, right? That's the story I told you, right? So the pollen tube is like a lift or an escalator එකක් වගේ. මේව sperm එකට it provides a nice easy passage towards the egg. Pollen tube. Highlight: sperms of seed plants do not require motility. Sperms of seed plants do not require motility. මෙච්චර කාල what did we have? Flagellated motile sperms, but no longer needed. Sperms can be lazy now. කම්මැලි වෙලා ඉන්න පුළුවන්. Because why? They have a pollen tube to deliver them. No need of flagella to swim. Next highlight: some gymnosperms retain the ancient flagellated condition. However, flagella has been lost in sperm of most gymnosperms and all angiosperms. Highlight all, right? All those are so much, I mean, very important MCQ points. Some gymnosperms, some plants, they can't give up their old habits. So they still have flagellated sperm. අපි ඊළඟට කතා කරන life cycle එක cycus is going to have flagellated sperm, which is why it's not a very good life cycle to learn gymnosperms, right? I don't know why they have put it in the syllabus. Cycus is a very weird gymnosperm. අපි එයාගේ life cycle එක ඉගෙන ගන්නවා as the way to learn gymnosperm life cycle, but it's not the, let's say, the ideal one, because it's a abnormal life cycle. Okay, but we can't do anything. That's why you don't even have proper diagrams. Cycus diagrams කියලා ගැහුවාම you don't have, right? The proper one to learn is Coniferophyta, Pinus වල life cycle, right? But it's not in what's in your resource. කරන්න දෙයක් නැහැ, right? So we'll see how this thing, the mature ovule becomes the seed bit later. Okay, bit later. But it's better if you can draw this. එහෙම නැත්නම් no, we'll talk about everything and we'll come back and do the note. නින්දන එකක් නෑ නේ, right? Okay. So that is what we have in under evolution, right? Read phylum Cycadophyta, page number 93. There are 3 examples for gymnosperms. Read phylum Cycadophyta. Read phylum Cycadophyta, because that's what we are going to talk about next, right? They have palm-like leaves and large cones. You have seen, right, a decoration එකට cycus. If you go to Hambantota, Shangri-La, you have මෙහෙම lines දෙකක් වගේ තියෙනවා, right? Everywhere you have, right? Gold face එකේ. I think Port City you have නේ? Yes. These cycus, they have flagellated sperm similar to those of seedless vascular plants. අන්න එක highlight කරන්න. They still have, they can't give up their old habits. They still have flagellated sperms. Highlight, they still have flagellated sperms. Right. Okay. Jump to plant reproduction, page number 145. Jump to plant reproduction, page number 145. Let's complete this diagram. So this orange color is what? Still the megasporangium, right? The orange color is one, still megasporangium, right? Which is called as the nucellus, right? I already labeled it. Nucellus came from megasporangium, right? Then let's draw the seed දෙකත් ඇඳගෙන ඔයා, right? So inside the seed, what's the special thing you are going to have? You are going to have a fertilized egg that is going to become a zygote, that is going to be an embryo. This is the most important thing, right? This is what? Embryo, right? So to provide nourishment to the embryo, you actually have the female gametophyte. Alright, because why? The fertilization occurred inside the female gametophyte. Ned? So this female gametophyte is going to become a food source for the embryo, that is called endosperm. Okay, you will understand everything. It is going to become a food source for the embryo called the endosperm. Then what was the sort of nourishment for the female gametophyte? Nucellus that came from megasporangium. That is going to reduce further. මෙහෙම පොඩි බෝඩරයක් වගේ thin line එකකට it's going to become very reduced. Alright. Actually, you don't even need to draw it. Alright. It's going to become very, very reduced. You need to know the main food source for the developing embryo is called the endosperm that came from the female gametophyte. Now, can you see? Tama female gametophyte cannot give up the old habit of nourishing the embryo. Can you see? The female gametophyte is very, very small now, but still it is going to nourish the developing embryo. Do you remember in Pogonatum it nourishes the sporophyte? Nephrolapis get the gametophyte provide nourishment to the developing embryo and the sporophyte. Still it's going to do the same thing. The female gametophyte is going to provide nourishment even in seed plants. Right? That පරණ පුරුදු අතාරින්න බෑ. Right? Then this integument I didn't label here. The blue color integument is going to become something called the blue color integument is going to become something called the seed coat. Seed coat that came from this blue color integument. Right? Integument was the protection for the ovule. It's going to be the protective layer of the seed as well. Seed coat. Okay. Right. What else do you have? Embryo, endosperm, food supply by the female gametophyte, which is the endosperm. So this is mature ovule. Sorry, this is a mature seed. Very sorry. Right. This is a mature seed. Yeah, you can call it a mature seed. Haritha. Right. There's a question. Will these plant life cycles come to essay type questions or for short notes? Essays. They are going to come for essays. Most commonly, Selaginella nephrolepis, but there's a chance of asking cycles. There's a chance of asking short notes, what alteration of generations in plants, or significant features of seedless vascular plants, significant features of seed plants. All those essays can come. Okay. So take out your note that you are making, right? A3 paper. Okay. So start the today's work. Seed plants. Right. Put the topic seed plants. Put the topic seed plants. Online people, take the note you are making. I hope I'll at the end of today I'll send you a completed note. I'll choose between who has the best one and right. I'll send you a completed note if you have missed anything. Right. Also for the physical people beneficial. Right. Seed plants. Divide them into two. Divide them into two. Paper. Divide them into two. Gymnosperms and angiosperms. Divide them into two, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Divide that into two, gymnosperms and angiosperms. Then draw this under the topic evolution of seed. Here, this sequence, how from an immature ovule you get a mature ovule, you get a seed. What is clear, right, online people? Label these properly. Okay. This integument කියන එක නෙවෙයි arrow එක ගහලා තියෙන්නේ, right? It's the next step. Okay. The immature ovule becomes the mature ovule. Nah, that's this thing. This, yes, this is still the integument tamai, right? The blue color is still the integument. Integument becomes what? Seed coat. Later. This is evolution of seed in gymnosperms, right? It's easier if we draw a separate one for uh, flowering plants. All right, this is gymnosperms. Okay, we'll draw separate on because if the differences, small differences are there, otherwise it's going to get confusing, right? Evolution of seed in gymnosperms. They were the pioneers of seed. So ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ seed එක we have to study first, then we'll see how flowering plants did some modifications. You can put a color for uh, female gametophyte if you like. This is the female gametophyta that is going to become the endosperm. Okay. Talk about the sperm in detail later, right? For now, just draw the pollen. Inside you have the male gametophyte, which is going to produce sperm. That's going to go through the micropyle and fertilize. And people, I sent a chat, send a photo to the group if it's unclear. Okay, 3 more minutes. Taggal and then taggal. So what is this orange one? Check out what was it at the very first one. It was the megasporangium, no? So megasporangium remnant, you can call it. What is remaining of the megasporangium? Natabunna, right? What is remaining? Very, very reduced layer, right? What about the ploidy? Embryo, embryo 2n. So if the food supply or the endosperm came from where? Female gametophyte. Neither. Female gametophyte kinna. Female gametophyte came from what? Megaspore. Megaspore a female gametophyte. Neither. So if the megaspore is haploid, female gametophyte is haploid, endosperm is also haploid. Ploidy levels on the right? Okay. Ploidy levels. That's why we draw these diagrams. Otherwise, no need, right? Because just the theory is there in the resource is enough. But that's how seeds evolved in gymnosperms. Okay, we can move on to cycus. There's a question. Where does the pollen tube originate from? Is it from the sperm or the female gametophyte? No. Actually, the whole pollen grain is deposited here, right? So, yeah, even if I mean, I just said the sperm comes here, but actually it's a pollen deposited here. Once the pollen is deposited here, the pollen become palaven, what we call as pollen germination. That is going to grow the structure called pollen tube. It's a structure arising from the pollen grain. All right. So it's produced by the pollen grain. Okay. Okay. Shall I erase? People who's drawing. If I tell again, sporophytes of gymnosperms, which is the dominant plant. Neda. If you go to a pinus tree, pinus trees දැකලා තියෙනවා නුවරඑළිය යනකොට පාරයිනේ තියෙන්නේ. අර ඒක ඒරියා එකක්ම තියෙන්නේ pine ගස් තියෙන්නේ. Have you seen a pine cone? බිම වැටලා තියෙන්නේ. Decoration එකටත් ගන්න. If you take such a pine cone, you have these ovules. What is an ovule? It has two stages. The immature ovule has what? The megasporangium surrounded by a protective layer called integument. Okay, megasporangium is going to produce a megaspore. That megaspore is going to become what? Female gametophyte. Female gametophyte is going to produce an egg. That egg is going to be fertilized by a sperm coming from the pollen grain that will have a male gametophyte. That fertilization will produce an embryo that will be surrounded by a food layer that came from the female gametophyte. That female gametophyte and the embryo and the seed coat, everything will be a nice package that is called as a seed, ready for dispersal at a nice location, right? Then pine cones නම් මොකද වෙන්නේ සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මෙතන බිම වැටෙනවා. right? Pine cones. But if you have like a fruit plant එකක් න, right? නිකන් පොස්සට ඒවා වවුල්ලු ගෙනියනවා කියලා කියනවා, right? So jackfruits, they are carried away by animals. The seeds get dropped away far away from a mother plant. So it aids the dispersal, right? For nice, yeah, the new seed can grow in a different habitat. That's why seeds evolved, right? Okay, let's move on to the example for this gymnosperm life cycle, that is cycus. Okay, cycus, as I told you, is very weird. To start with, cycus has two sporophytes. What do you mean by sporophyte? That is the dominant generation, no? Dominant generation that we can usually see in the environment. Sporophyte. Cycus has two sporophytes. There's a male tree and a female tree. කියලා දෙකක් තියෙනවා. Okay, there is one thing special. It has two types of sporophytes. Alright. So the two types of sporophytes are going to produce what? Two types of spores. නේද? What is the spore produced by the male plant or the male sporophyte? It's going to have what? Sporangia, which are microsporangia. In microsporangia, what are you going to get? Microspores. Microspores are going to be enclosed by a pollen. That pollen is going to produce what? Sperms. Sperms, when they get deposited to a seed, they will fertilize the egg and produce a seed. ඔය ස්ටෝරි එක තමයි. Okay, come to the resource. Page number in evolution and diversity, sorry, plant form, life cycle of cycus, page number 145 නේද? Page number 145, life cycle of cycus. What is the phylum? What is the phylum of cycus? Cycadophyta. Scientific name, cycus. Okay, let's read and we'll draw the life cycle. Okay, take out your tutes as well. Follow the tute while you are reading the resource. Online people, you have got the tute delivered, right? Right? Take the tute. There's a cycus diagram, black and white. Huh? Black and white cycus diagram. Keep it on one side and the resource book on one side. Follow it while you are reading. Huh? Okay. Sporophytes are the dominant photosynthetic plants. Sporophyte is dominant. Highlight. Sporophyte is dominant. දැන් ඉතින් මේවා nothing new, right? Sporophyte is going to be dominant. Sporophyte is the dominant photosynthetic plants. Gametophytes are reduced and depend on the sporophyte throughout his life. Highlight, gametophyte is reduced. Next point. So we are going to talk about the sporophyte a bit. Right, එතන ඉඳලා points 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 විතර points යනකන් තියෙන්නේ. It's a description about the sporophyte. Sporophytes are a perennial tree with roots, stem and leaves. Proper roots, proper stems, proper leaves are here. Okay, what do you mean by a perennial tree? There are annuals, biennials, and perennials. Annual means they only grow for one season. I mean, let's say 2 seasons. There's a dry season and a wet season, right? So there's a growing season and a dormant season. Like, yeah, for any plant, there's a time of the year that the plant grows. And in the dry season, it sort of stays, just survives. If a plant only survives such only one cycle, that is called an annual. Paddy එක කන්න කියන්නේ එක කන්නේ නේ එක වැස්ස කාලය එක dry season එකේ දෙකයිනේ paddy තියෙන ඊළඟට we harvest it. So it's an annual. Biennials means they can survive for roughly 2 years. Perennials, they can survive multiple years and years and years. That means almost all the big trees are perennials, right? So sporophyte is a perennial tree with roots, stems and leaves. Stem is unbranched, columnar and woody. Have you seen these palm trees? Right? Never. There is no attu, right? No branching, right? Columnar means kanuwak wage killing. Column ekak wage, right? And woody. If you cut a cross section, you can see woody. Woody. What is the definition of wood? Kineka you will learn, right? It means it has a good supportive structure. That's why it can grow strong. Grow tall, right? Leaves are arranged as crowns. If you look at the diagram, you can see අර පොල්ලතු වගේ වටේට මෙහෙම රවුමට තමයි leaves arranged වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. That's why we grow it as like a ornamental tree. Ornamental tree එකක් විදියට, that's why we grow it. There's some beauty look. Okay. Compound leaves show xerophytic adaptations. Highlight xerophytic. What do you mean by xerophytic adaptations? It is adapted to survive in dry conditions, low water conditions. Young leaves are fiddleheads. That means our young leaves are curled like this. කොම්බු වගේ curled වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. When they are gradually maturing, they are going to get straightened like this. නැත්නම් young විදියට ඉන්නේ මෙහෙම curl වෙලා. They are going to straighten up when they are gradually becoming mature. So sporophytes are heterosporous and dioecious. Dioecious පැටලෙන්නේ නැහැ නේ දැන් නේද? What do you mean by dioecious? What do you mean by dioecious? There are two plants. දෙකක් තියෙනවා. As male and female. Dioecious. So if this is the female plant, it has these sort of leaves arranged like this, right? Cycas එකක්. If you have a cycas nearby, go and see. The important thing is, it has what we call as a මෙහෙම crown එකක් කියලා හැදෙනවා in the female plant, a crown. So this is female what? Sporophyte. Similarly, you are going to have a male sporophyte. Similarly, you are going to have a male sporophyte. It has roots, ne? Maybe the roots තියෙනවා, stem තියෙනවා, proper leaves, right? It's a nice tree, right? So it's also going to have these leaves, right? ඕගොල්ලෝ අඳිද්දි ලස්සනට ඇඳ ගන්න, right? So this has a crown. The female has a crown, na? This is a female crown. Crown of megasporophylls. Male ලයට තියෙන්නේ මෙහෙම පොඩි පොග්ගල කෝන් එකක් වගේ එකක්. That is called the male cone. Right? It's called the male cone. Female ලයට crown එකක් තියෙනවා, female ලයට male ලයට cone එකක් විතරයි. So male sporophyte. So why do we call this sporophyte dioecious? There's a male and a female. දෙකක් ඉන්නවා. Di කියන්නේ 2. Dioecious. Okay. Keep reading. Sporophytes have developed a taproot system. Yes. එහෙම මැද there's a main taproot කියන එක දන්නවන්නේ අර මුදු මුලක් කියලා කියන්නේ right. There's a main root that is going down. Sporophytes have developed a taproot system, right? No need that much detail to in the diagrams, right? Okay. Secondary growth is present, that we'll talk about in plant form. That means it's something that we only see in gymnosperms and some seed plants, right? Sorry, some flowering plants. That means the plant is able to grow wide. The metrical we talked about only about plants, palati කියන ඒවානේ. They never get wider, right? They only grow taller and taller. And while they are growing taller, they sort of have a small increase in thickness, but it's not a specialized process. Secondary growth means there's a specialized process to make the tree wide, right? That's how the tree becomes strong, right? Lower parts of a tree are wider and upper parts are narrow. එහෙමනේ හැදිලා තියෙන්නේ. උඹට යනකොට. That's is called secondary growth. That's something you will see in gymnosperms and some flowering plants. Okay. So highlight secondary growth is present. Sporophytes which produce megaspores are the female plants and which produce microspores are the male plants. Okay. Then mature female plants produces a crown of megasporophylls. Crown එකක් තියෙනවා. Crown of megasporophylls. Right. Megasporangium is enclosed in a protective layer called integument. මතකයිනේ දැන්, right? Megasporangium is not left outside. It is enclosed in a protective layer called integument. Integument has a small pore in the distal end called micropyle. These things you know now. Highlight micropyle, integument. So, if we take out one of these megasporophylls from this crown එකෙන් එකක් ගලවලා ගන්න. Right, I can't draw it very nicely. So it's like this, and normal megasporophylls are sort of like this, right? Oh, it's not, it's like a sort of crown like thing, right? So it is going to have ovules. Okay, it's going to have, what are these? Still immature ovules. Immature ovules. What are the parts of the ovule? Cover a integument. ඇතුලේ ඉන්නේ කවුද? Megasporangium. Right. So what are these? These are your ovules. Right. Right. Keep reading the resource. You can draw this later. දැන් මම දින හදිසි වෙන්න එපා. Okay. Next line. One of the cells in the megasporangial tissue differentiates into a single megaspore mother cell. Megaspore mother cell undergoes meiosis to form 4 haploid megaspores, out of which only one remains functional. So if you take this ovule and zoom into it, මේ ovule එක ගන්නවා. Right? It is surrounded by what? Integument and මෙහෙම attach වෙලා තියෙනවා. right? Inside, what do you have? Megasporangium. Megasporangium is a multicellular structure. No? Out of that, one is chosen. අව තමයි ඊළඟ වටේට යන්නේ කියලා. One of the cells of the megasporangium is chosen to be what? Megaspore mother cell. Megaspore mother cell. What is the remainder? This is Medica. What? Megasporangium. What's going to happen to the megaspore mother cell? Mother cell එක මොකද්ද? Meiosis. 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 So still inside the ovule, right? Some ovule එක ඇතුලේ ඉන්නේ. So this megaspore mother cell is going to give rise to how many daughters? Meiosis වලින් how many daughter cells you are going to get? 4. 1 2 3 4. නේ? Makes sense. So the megaspore mother cell is diploid. Each of these daughters are what? Haploid, 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 haploid. But only one will remain functional. These three are not going to remain. එක්කෙනා ඉතුරු වෙනවා. Okay. So step by step resource එකයි diagram එකයි we are going side by side, nah? Right? Yeah. ඔළුව එහෙම යවගන්න එපා, right? Pay attention. Okay. Only one will remain functional. So we are here. The remaining megasporangial tissue becomes the nucellus, right? So this is the megasporangium. So this megasporangial tissue here will be called what? Nucellus. නේද? නේ? New name. Because this ovule is gradually becoming what? A mature ovule. Gradually becoming a mature ovule ready to be fertilized. Right? Okay. So we are up to there. So the remaining megasporangial tissue functions as nucellus. Right? Hemita hitana, right? Nucellus. So next one, megaspores are not released to the external environment. So how do the megaspore? Yeah, this one is the megaspore, the chosen one, the one remaining out of the 4 daughter cells. So අපි එක නම දෙමු. What is it? It's the megaspore. What is the fate of the megaspore? Megaspore develops into the female gametophyte within the ovule. So mature ovule contains what? Female gametophyte. I told you, mature ovule should contain a female gametophyte with an egg ready to receive a sperm anytime and become a seed. නේද? A mature ovule should be ready. අපෝ මට බෑ මම තාම gametophyte එක හදලා නැහැ එහෙම බෑ. That sort of ovule is what? Immature, not ready. Right? A mature ovule should be ready with the female gametophyte ready to receive a sperm. Okay. So let's draw a mature gametophyte. Sorry, mature ovule. In the mature ovule, you need to know some things, right? So the integument is going to remain a bit lower on the mature. Actually, it's better in this story if I take the new micropyle to the top. Micropyle like උඩට ගත්තොත් it's better. Okay, it's easy for me to draw that. So මේ පැත්තෙන් I'll draw the attachment point. Yeah. මේකට set වෙලා තියෙන point එක this side. Okay, this is the micropyle. On top I'll draw the micropyle. Here also on top I'll draw the micropyle. මොකද sperm එක උඩින්නේ. Okay, right? Do you understand? It's easy for me to draw. නැත්තම් මෙහෙම යටින් ඇවිල්ලා දින්න ඕනේ. Okay. So here you have the sort of where the ovule attaches. Megasporangium. This is what? Integument. Okay. Online people, Nidhi, right? So here is the attachment point of the mature ovule. Here is going to be the micropyle, and home we are having the structure of mature ovule. Okay. So what are the things found inside the mature ovule? You need to have what? A female gametophyte. Neither. You need to have a female gametophyte. Female gametophyte produces what? Female gametophyte has reproductive organs called what? Archegonia. Neither. Female gametophyte has reproductive structures called archegonia. So this is female gametophyte that came from what? Megaspore. Right. Female gametophyte which came from the megaspore. Okay. So what is the remaining megasporangium is going to become? This is megasporangium. Neither. What is the remaining megasporangium in the mature ovule? Yes. It's called what? Nucellus. Nucellus. Nucellus matakain, right? Right. Megasporangium is going to be called by a new name called what? Nucellus, which is the nourishment for the female gametophyte. Mature ovule now complete. Is the mature ovule complete now? Female gametophyte is there inside the ovule. There's an integument. So what's the female gametophyte going to do? Produce eggs. Neither. Produce eggs. Okay, keep reading. Megaspore develops into the female gametophyte within the ovule. Mature ovule contains the female gametophyte. Female gametophyte produces several archegonia. Each archegonium produces a single egg. Highlight single egg. These are what? These are what? Archegonia. These are, they each produce one egg. Okay. අපි එතනින් පොඩ්ඩකට female ගේ story එක නවත්තනවා. Then what has happened to the female? Female sporophyte is there. Female sporophyte has a crown of megasporophylls. In the crown, you have ovules. In the immature ovule, what do you have? Megasporangium. One of the cells of the megasporangium is going to become a megaspore mother cell. Megaspore mother cell is going to divide by meiosis to produce 4 cells. Only one will remain functional. That is called the megaspore. Megaspore is haploid. That will give rise to the female gametophyte inside the mature ovule. So now the female is ready to receive the sperm. Female story ඉවරයි. නේද? So we have to continue the male story after the break. Okay? Take an early break. We'll finish the cycus life cycle. People, any questions? Continuous assessment 1 කියලා All right. Online people, can you hear? Yes. So I'm planning end of this month. So online people, your new tute delivery will happen by the end of this month. New tute for the fourth lesson, plant form. It will come as two tutes. One will have all the diagrams and the things we need to complete, and the other one will be classified past papers. So I tried to make it more organized, right? So you will end up with a question tute and a, let's say, diagram tute, two things, two separate, right? So by the end of this month, you will start I plan to start at the end of this month. Okay. So next week it's going to be animal evolution, right? Different phylums of animals. So actually, I'm studying tonight most of the animals of animal phylums for my exam tomorrow. So I have a parasitology exam tomorrow, right? For parasitology, who are the most parasites in your body? Almost all the animal phyla, invertebrates. So many worms. Platyhelminthes කියලා, tapeworms can be found in your body. Then nematodes, worms can be found inside your body. Then a lot of protozoa can be found inside your body, right? I think I showed you some protozoa, né? When you're doing parasitic protozoa, I showed you, right? Even amoeba can be parasitic. Some species of amoeba can grow inside your body and invade and sort of actually cause holes in your liver, right? Liver abscess can be caused by certain species of amoeba. Dirty water bond, right? And some worms. And there are a lot of arthropods that are parasites. Ticks, mice, lice, flies, mosquitoes, so many arthropods. So right, in a scientific name, right? Worms like it, whipworm, hookworm, pinworm. Okay, scientific name. So okay, and also snakes. Night, parasitology. Right? Snakes come under that subject house, however. Right? Do you know how many poisonous snakes are in Sri Lanka? Right? Highly poisonous. Highly poisonous kiyakinna. Right? Okay, kapu poisonous you need to know. There's five species. One is everybody knows. Yes, cobra. Ne? Cobra. Cobra scientific name is Naja. Okay, Naja. Right? Then there are two types of crates. Crates කියන්නේ සිංහලෙන් මොනවද කියන්නේ crates වල? කරවලය කියලා කියන්නේ. කරවලය. තෙල් කරවලයි මල් කරවලයි කියලා අහලා තියෙනවද? Indian crate and Ceylon crate. Two types. ඔතනින් කවුද ලංකාවේ ඉන්න most poisonous snake කවුද? Who is the most poisonous snake in Sri Lanka? Indian crate. තෙල් කරවල. very likely to die. Okay, how does this Indian crate bite a person at night? කෑවද කියලා දන්නේ නැහැ. His bite is very painless. Right? Crate poison is a neurotoxin. You get paralyzed. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් වැඩිපුරම නයි ගහන්නේ කාටද? Farmers. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් ඔය හේනේ රැට ඉන්න farmers ලගේ because of the body warmth the crate comes to the bed. නයත් එක්ක නිදා ගන්න. නයා නෙවෙයි. කරවලා එක්ක නිදා ගන්න. උදේ නැගිටිනකොට කාලා ගිහිල්ලා but he doesn't know because he is going to be paralyzed. Right? There's going to be kidney failure as well. Kidney failure, eyelids muscle paralysis. Before he goes to the hospital, dead. Okay. Most painful bite එක තියෙන නයා. Cobra. නයා ගැහුවොත් very painful. And if he bites something like a toe or like a very peripheral thing, and සමහරවිට neck cross එලා මැරිලා යන්නත් පුළුවන් ඇඟිල්ලේ. අපපුත. Right? Very let's say very painful poison. Crates ලගේ හිම. Who is the other type? Vipers. Vipers වල මොකද කියන්නේ? සිංහලෙන් මොකද කියන්නේ? Vipers වල පොළොංගු ජාති දෙකක් ඉන්නවා. Russell's viper, වැලි පොළඟ. Sorry, Russell's කියන්නේ තිත් පොළඟ. And there's a Ceylon viper called the වැලි පොළඟ. ඔතනින් ඒ පොළොංගු ගහන්නේ නිකන් ඩග්. ඒ කියන්නේ they are very sort of forceful bites. අයි පොළඟ ගැහුවා කියලා everybody knows. Yes? Have you heard these stories? You need to know, right? How do you know පොළඟෙක් ගහලා කියලා? They know පොළඟෙක් ගැහුවා. Right? ඒ කියන්නේ he is going to like අර නිකන් ලොකු ෂොට් එකක් නිකන් physically හපනත් එක්කම නිකන් හයියෙන් පයින්නවා. Right? කරවලා or crate you don't know නිකන් ඔහම යන ගමන් කාගෙන ගිහින්. You don't know. At night you don't know කරවල එක පෑගුණා කාලත් එක්ක. You don't know. All right? So those are things you need to know. And what do you know about the treatments? නිකන් ජොරි පොඩියට නිකන්. Plant life cycles. I hate plant life cycles. මේ වගේ කතා කරන්න තිබුණා නියම. What is the treatment for a snake bite? Antivenom. Antivenom කියලා තියෙනවා. Antivenom. There is only one medicine or let's say a treatment in the world. If you get an allergy to it, you keep on giving. දැන් ඔයගලන්ට මොකක් හරි බෙහෙතකට ඇලර්ජි එකක් ආවොත් ડોක්ටර් ටක් ගාලා ඒක නවත්තනවා. පට ගාලා ඇලර්ජි එකක් ආවොත් ඒක නවත්තනවා. මොකක් හරි ඉන්ජෙක්ෂන් එකක් දෙන එක if you get an allergy, you are going to stop it. This antivenom, many people are allergic to it. Okay? Antivenom, many people are allergic to it. But no matter how allergic you get, your pressure එක අඩු වෙලා මෙහි රතු වෙලා ගෙඩි දාලා right? Allergy symptoms කොච්චර ආවත් they are going to keep giving you antivenom. මොකද ඒක නවත්තන එක more dangerous than the allergic reaction. Right? Antivenom. And yes, if you come to any ETU, then someone around Colombo area, not much. If you go to a peripheral hospital, if you become a doctor, මෙහෙම බෝතලේ හරි බෑග් එක දාගෙන හරි ගේනවා. Right? ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ගේන්නේ අර මාපිල් පැටව අරුමුන් වගේ mildly poisonous අය. Right? But if they show you, you need to identify මේ මොකಾದ මේ ගහලා තියෙන්නේ. Right? Because depending on the poison, you need to manage. Maybe kidney failure, blood clotting අවුල් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. You can have internal bleeding. Right? Depending on the snake, it's not the antivenom that you have to decide. Antivenom කෝකත් එකයි තියෙන්නේ. Right? එකයි තියෙන්නේ. But the dose can change depending on what the snake is. The dose can change, but there's only one type of antivenom. Right? But what you have to why do you need to identify the snake? To manage the complications. Some a lot of kidney fail, bleeding. So different snakes have different poisons. Okay? ලංකාව අපි මේ මීටියට මාරු විදිහට නයි ගහන්න රට. Right? Not around these suburban areas, but if you go to periphery යන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. කොළඹින් චුට්ටක් එළියට ගියාම හරියට so many snake bites. Right? So those things will come under animal evolution. Right? Anyway, come back to plant. Online people? Okay, where did we stop? We stopped the female story, no? So where is the female? Ready to receive the sperm. Neither. Female has produced a mature ovule ready to receive the sperm. So we'll take a look at what is being done by the male sporophyte. Okay. So page 145, last paragraph, page 145, last paragraph. Okay. Read. Mature male plants produce male cones with microsporophylls which consist of microsporangia on the lower surface. Large numbers of microspores are produced from microspore mother cells within the microsporangium by meiosis. Right. So, if you take a close look, leaf, take one leaf out of this male cone, right? You will see that sort of it's not exactly like this, like Mehematine, right? Underneath there, you have this sort of microsporangia there, right? Not exactly accurate, right? It can differ, right? These are what this is a microsporophyll containing microsporangia. Microsporangia are going to do what? Produce microspores, right? So what does it say? Microsporophylls consist of microsporangia on the lower surface. Large number of microspores are produced from microspore mother cells. Right. Keep reading. Next page. They develop into pollen grains within the sporangium. Highlight. Develop into pollen grains within the sporangium. So these microsporangia are going to produce what? Microspores. Microspore is going to be enclosed by pollen wall to produce pollen. Neither. So microspores are produced by what cell division? Yes, meiosis. Neither. So we'll write it in this same color, maybe black. Meiosis. Here also meiosis. Microspores are produced by meiosis. Pollen is produced. Pollen is surrounded by the pollen wall composed of what? Sporopollenin, right? It protects the inside microspore, right? Keep reading, right? They develop into pollen grains within the sporangium and then discharge. Pollens are dispersed by wind and deposited on the micropyle of a mature ovule, right? So pollen grains are dispersed, right? So pollen can have variable shapes, right? So they are going to disperse and get deposited here, right? What is this journey of the pollen from the male cone to the ovule? That is pollination. No. Pollination by what? What is the medium? Agent of pollination, yes. What is the agent? Wind. Right? Because why? Why wind pollinated? Any idea why? Because this ovule is boring. No? සතෙක්ට ගෙනිහිල්ලා මෙතෙන්ට right. So pollen is usually carried by animals, no other way, right? If an animal will go and deposit it here, there should be some benefit for the animal here. No? Reward එකක් තියෙනවා. මේක කන්න බෑ. This ovule, you can't eat it because why? There's no fruit around it. These are naked plants, naked seed plants. So why do they have to rely on? They have to rely on wind for the pollination. For to deposit the pollen at the micropyle, wind should be there. Okay. Pollen grains enter the pollen chamber of the ovule through the micropyle. Now, so I'm going to add some details to this ovule we have. There's a nice, let's say, reception in the ovule for the pollen grain, like a waiting area. There's like a waiting area for the pollen in the ovule that is called what? Pollen chamber. අර නිකන් pollen ලට බලන් ඉන්න pollen chamber, right? In the pollen chamber, pollen grains develop into male gametophytes. Highlight. Pollen grains develop into male gametophytes. Male gametophyte consists of a branched pollen tube which involves in absorption of nutrients from the nucellus. Male gametophyte is short-lived. Pollen tube. So this pollen grain is going to germinate in the pollen chamber and it's going to මෙහෙම extend කරනවා what? Pollen tube. Pollen tube. So what is this orange color thing? What is surrounding it? It's the nucellus, right? So the nucellus provides nourishment to the male gametophyte as well. So what is this now at this point? මෙයාට අපි මොකද්ද කියන්නේ? Is it the pollen now? No. Inside what did you have? Microspore. Microspore is now what? Male gametophyte. Male gametophyte, right? They produce two large flagellated sperms, right? Two large flagellated sperms. Keep reading. Highlight two large flagellated. Na? Flagellated කියන වචනේ highlight, box or do whatever. Very, very important. Two large flagellated sperms. I'll draw this pollen ටිකක් මෙහෙම එළියෙන් අඳින්නම්. They are sort of නිකන් අර මේ pears ගෙඩියක් වගේ like this, right? Two pollen grains are produced, right? It's like this and they have this sort of band of cilia. මෙහෙම cilia band එකක් තියෙනවා. Cilia, right? They have a band of cilia, two bands, two bands of cilia around them. Okay, that's what gives them their motility. Okay, that's not in your syllabus. What you need to know, it's, we call it flagellated, but it's actually by cilia they are moving. Okay, so anyway, these are flagellated motile sperms killer. You remember MEMS කීයක් හදනවද? 2x දෙකක් හදනවා, right? So pollen tube එකක් තියෙනවා නේ. We have a pollen tube. Why do we need flagellated sperms? So we just learned maybe an hour ago pollen tube is like a lift given to the sperm to go into the archegonia, reach the egg. So why are they still flagellated? Why? Because cycus evolution is, it's very weird. There's a internal water area here. There's some internal water here. Online people, I'll send you if you can't see clearly. There's some internal water here that is called archegonial chain. It's like a challenge. The sperm මෙච්චර දුර pollen tube එකෙන් ගෙනාවට කමක් නැහැ. You still have to swim through some water. There is a bit of water inside the ovule that is found in the archegonial chamber. Right? Keep reading. Right? So they produce two large flagellated sperms. What? The male gametophyte. Male gametophyte produces two flagellated sperms. By what cell division? Male gametophyte produces two flagellated sperms. By what? Mitosis. Huh? Because male gametophyte is N. Sperms are N. End of the pollen tube ruptures, releasing the sperms into archegonial chambers. Sperms swim through liquid medium. Highlight. Swim through liquid medium and fertilize the egg. Okay. Keep reading. Fertilize the egg, resulting in a 2N zygote. Zygote develops into the embryo. Zygote develops into the embryo. Keep reading. Remaining male gametophyte becomes the endosperm. Neither. Female gametophyte becomes the endosperm, which provides nutrients for the developing embryo during seed germination. Integument becomes the seed coat, blue color integument. Ovule becomes the seed. Right? So මම පොඩියට මේන් අඳින්න the ovule. Right? So what are the changes in the ovule? Inside the ovule, what do you have? Ovule is surrounded by the integument. Sorry, integument becomes what? Seed coat. Well, seed coat. Inside, what do you have? Embryo. Female gametophyte surrounding it is known as what now? Endosperm. What becomes what කියන එක very very important. Female gametophyte becomes the endosperm. Right? Female gametophyte becomes the endosperm. Embryo. What else? What else is found inside the seed? ඔය තියෙන්නේ endosperm and labeled integument becoming what? Seed coat. What else? Nucellus reducers. ඒ ඔක්කොම reduce වෙනවා to small small layers, negligible, right? Main nutrition is provided by the endosperm. Neither. So very important. Remaining female gametophyte becomes the endosperm. Integument becomes the seed coat. Ovule, which is what we had here, will become what? Seed. This is the seed. Ready for dispersal. Seed is the dispersal unit. Read, right? Seed is a dispersal unit which contains the embryo and stored food. What is the name of the stored food? Endosperm. If you want, you can. This is what lunch එක pack කරලා දීලා තියෙන්නේ. Stored food. Stored food. Seeds are dispersed and under favorable environmental conditions, seeds germinate, producing seedlings. පුළුවන් නම් මේම arrow line එකක් උඩ ඉඳලා ඇඳගෙන ඇවිල්ලා මේව ඇවිල්ලා what are you going to get? These two sporophytes. Okay, life cycle. Right, tell me the ploidy levels. මේගොල්ලන්ගේ ploidies කියන්න බලන්න. Male sporophyte 2n, female sporophyte 2n. What else? Microspora n. What else? So what became the new nucellus? Megasporangium. What becomes the nucellus? Megasporangium. So ek ඕනේ nucellus is a diploid structure because it's part of the sporophyte. Megaspore mother cell is 2n. Megaspore is n. Female gametophyte is n. නේද? Female gametophyte is n. Why? It was produced by meiosis here. නේද? Female gametophyte is n. Ta-da-ta-da. What becomes the endosperm? Female gametophyte. Haploid. Endosperm is haploid. Very important MCQ point. Cycus endosperm. Haploid. Okay. Embryo. Diploid. No. Right. Galandega. Big phylum Cycadophyta. Cycus. I'll give you 15 minutes. Learn people, any questions? Okay. Yeah. Cycadophyta example Cycus. හොඳට space අරන් අඳි. How much? Really? දුවලා ගිහලා කියලා. Office. I don't have the remote. You have to tell the office. People, any questions? So you know next class I'm going to start with explaining these. So එමයි කියලා තේරුම් ගන්න නැතුව ඉන්න එපා. Try to understand but don't worry too much also. All right. And next week I'm going to finish the class in 3 hours. Okay. Right. No break. 8:30 to 11:30. I'm going to finish a bit early. Okay. මගේ drawing අවුල් නම් look at the diagram in the tute. Take inspiration from there. Huh? But it can be a bit complicated, the diagram in the tute, right? 5 more minutes. So, what can you say about the trend of gametophyte becoming reduced? What has become to the gametophyte? It's not even visible to the naked eye. It's inside the mature ovule. Female gametophyte and the male gametophyte both are produced inside the ovule. I mean, so the male one is in the pollen chamber, but anyway, can you see them? No, very reduced. Okay, still writing. Pay careful attention when you are drawing the ovule, which is the integument, which is the nucellus layer, which is the female gametophyte, where are the archegonia. Each archegonium produces one egg. How the pollen grain germinates and produce pollen tube, but the pollen tube comes only halfway. There are some internal water to travel through, found where in the archegonial chamber. So next month we are starting paper class, right? දන්නවනේ February මුලින් ඉඳලා. Still the date has to be decided and it will be done online. Probably late at night, 7 to 9 වගේ. දාගන්න 10ටනේ, right? The day we'll see, right? Let's have a poll maybe. Group එකේ poll එකක් දාමු. Yeah, that paper class will continue. I mean, it will become the physical paper class once the 2026 people are done. Online paper class will become a physical paper class when the 2026 people are done, because the 2026 people are having the physical paper class now. So they have a paper writing slot and paper discussion separate. Right? So in the physical paper class, your papers will be marked and given, right? And yeah, I started that process with the 2026 people. Higher scorers list like a Dana group again. And before 2 months to the exam, we are going to start final, let's say, guest papers, maybe 4 guest papers. And until then, so for the 2026 people, I'm planning 15 papers before their exam. So they can see, they can see if their marks are improving or not. That's the main purpose of doing papers, to see if your studying is working. Ne? Bio පාඩම් කරන විදිය හරිද? හරි නැත්නම් ලකුණු අඩුයි. හරි නම් ලකුණු තියෙනවා. Makes very simple sense. That's why we say yes, bio is a theoretical subject, but questions කරන්න නැතුව you can't evaluate your own mistakes. Maybe you don't need to do papers as much as physics or chemistry, but in bio, if you don't do papers, you don't know your own level, right? If you, just because you know bio doesn't mean you can't get you can get marks. Just because you know bio, you can't get marks at A levels. MC right? So that's why paper classes are important. Okay, done නේද? No? Answer? Still doing? Online people, any questions? You can see that corner, right? This corner, bit difficult. Yeah, there's a question. Is the embryo formed by, I mean, there's no embryo formation with all the eggs. Huh? Yes, there are several archegonia and several eggs are produced, but only one will get fertilized. Only one will get fertilized and become the embryo. First come, first serve, right? මුලින්ම set වෙන egg එකත් එක්ක fertilization will happen. Then no more fertilization, right? Even if there is multiple eggs, only one egg will get fertilized. Huh? Okay, 1 minute, ටක් ගාලා. Okay. So moving on to flowering plants, there are some significant differences, but the basic idea is the same. There is ovule formation and then a dispersal unit called the seed is produced. But here, what is happening in the ovule is different and can be complicated. Okay, what is happening in the ovule is different and can be complicated. Keep some space under cycus. Cycus at podi space at the to write some points. I'll give next week. Right. Keep some space. Chutti space at the right. Maybe five, 6 sentences. Keep some space under cycus to write down some sentences. We'll write those next week. Let's move on to angiosperms or flowering. So as the name says, what is the most, let's say, significant thing about a flowering plant? What is the most significant thing about a flowering plant? Flower. There's a flower. What is a flower? What is a flower? It's actually, let's say, an invitation for an animal, most commonly, to do this. Pollination karanna invitation. This. Right? So it's like this. A flower has some parts to make the flower look attractive. Then flower has some parts, let's say, මෙමය අර මුලින්ම ඇතුළට ගෙන්න ගන්න there's some advertising outside. ඇතුළට ආවට පස්සේ there's a reward inside the flower for the pollinator. අපි හිතන්න මීමැස්සෙක්, right? So to attract him, imagine you are going to a shop. You are going inside the shop because maybe advertising නිකන් attractive board එකක් ගහලා තියෙනවා. Right? Maybe අර එළිය board එකක් අලං උසන් නටන එකෙක් ඉන්නවා. ඒ වගේ some sort of advertising is there to get your attention. So flowers have some paths for that. Then once you are inside the flower, inside the shop, you have discounts. Inside the flower also you have some rewards for coming inside. So it's like that. The flower is all an elaborate structure to promote pollination in order to do a fertilization and produce a seed. Right? That's the main. That's, let's say, the only purpose for flower. Right? Because there is a structure called the flower, there is chance for the ovule that's becoming the seed to be enclosed by something tasty that is called fruit. Fruit is going to help with what? Dispersal. Fruit is helping with dispersal. Flower is helping with pollination. So those two adaptations both are contributing for the, let's say, widespread dispersal of flowering plants in the world. There are so many, I mean, species wise, species number එක ගත්තහම it is flowering plants that is dominating the environment, right? So before we move on to flowering plants, we need to know the structure of a flower, right? In your exam, they can ask you to draw and describe and label a flower, a typical flower, right? So you need to know how to draw a basic flower and label the parts, right? So let's come to the resource. Okay. Phylum Anthophyta, angiosperms, page number 93. Phylum Anthophyta, angiosperms. Read. First and foremost, there is presence of flowers. Highlight. Vikiogam, then I'll explain. Right? Stamens produce microspores, and these microspores develop into pollen grains. Pollen grains contain male gametophytes or the gametes. Carpels produce megaspores, and these megaspores produce female gametophytes or the embryo sac. Highlight. Stamen produce microspores. What are these stamens? I'll explain. Carpels produce megaspores. Highlight. Seeds are enclosed within carpels. Highlight. Next feature, production of fruits. Highlight. Flowers uttino, fruits uttino. Seeds are protected by fruits which help in their dispersal. Highlight the word dispersal. That's why plants produce it. නිකන් සතුන්ට කන්න දෙන්න ඕන හින්දා නෙවෙයි. Right? පවුනේ. එහෙම නෙවෙයි. It's for their own benefit. The fruit typically consists of a fertilized ovule and sometimes include other persistent floral plants. මලේ ඉතුරු වෙච්ච කැලි ටිකකුත් can be included in the fruit. Some parts remaining from the flower can be included in the fruit. Persistent flower parts. The mangoes ගෙඩියක් ගත්තොත්, have you seen? In mangoes you have certain green color massive නිකන් petals වගේ තුනක් තියෙනවානේ. Mangoes. So that's the fruit. But some parts of the mangosteen flower is remaining on the fruit, right? After fertilization, ovary wall thickens and develops into a fruit. Highlight. After fertilization, ovary wall thickens and develops into a fruit. Ovules develop as the seed of the fruit. පළතුරක් ගත්තොත් it has seeds inside, right? Fruits have seeds inside. Fruit protects the dormant seeds and aid in their dispersal. That's the same thing again and again. Okay. So now can you understand evolution? As an evolution you can't understand without knowing the plant form. So you don't know what's a carpel, you don't know what's a stamen is, right? You don't know what's an embryo sac. Right? So where are you going to find the plant form? So go there. Page number 146. Page number 146. Life cycle of flowering plants. So we better start with the flower, no? So there's a diagram in your resource as well. So a flower is actually a modified wall. Wall එකක් කියන්නේ මොකද්ද මෙහෙම? It's like a, let's say, a circular collection of sporophylls. It's a bunch of leaves. අපි මලක් කියලා කිව්වට it's highly modified leaves. It's composed of highly modified leaves, right? It's actually a wall of sporophylls. That's how we call it, right? In a flower, there's a male part and a female part. So we are drawing a typical one, right now. One we can learn the structure of. There's a female part. Right? The female part is called carpel. The entire female thing is called the carpel. You know the flower structure, right? All else right? This is the female part. Okay. Inside the female part, you have what? Female usually produce what? Ovules, right? Usually the female produces ovules. So inside here, this expanded lower end of the female part, we have several ovules. Several ovules. Right? And the male part, so we are drawing like a all-in-one flower here. The male part is like this. It's very simple. It has only two parts, the male components, right, of a flower. Called, there are two parts called anther and filament. So male and female parts are. Then we have our sort of attractive floral parts, right? Malak කියලා කියන්නේ මේ ටික නෙවෙයි. Where are the what? How do you? What is the most distinct feature of a flower? Peti ne, petals. A flower has petals, right? A flower should have petals. Okay, drawing වැඩිය ගණන් ගන්නවා. Right? The flower has petals, right? Okay, petals. So, and also there can be, when the before the flower blooms, it's like a bud, no? It's covered like a bud, right? Before the flower blooms, it's covered by a sort of casing, no? So parts of that casing can remain even after the flower blooms. Parts of that casing can remain after the flower blooms. Those are called sepals. Sepals, petals and sepals. Then they got them, and the plant is attached to. අපි මල කඩලා ගන්න එතනින්නේ, right? Receptacle. What's in your syllabus? Yes, receptacle. Receptacle. Let's label the female parts. This expanded part that is containing the ovules is called what? Ovary. Ovary, right? This is the input. This is where you deposit pollen grains. Pollen is going to come and get deposited here. This is called stigma. Then there's a chimney connecting the ovary to the stigma, that is called style. Stigma, style and ovary together form what? Is the female components of the flower. I'll write the ovary here. Right. Ovary. These three together is called what? Carpel. Carpel is the collective name we give for the female parts of the flower. Then we get to the male parts. Male parts actually only have two, let's say, components. This top expanded part, expanded part, is called anther. Anther. එහෙම පොඩි holder එකක් වගේ, that is holding this anther is called what? Filament. So anther and filament together is called what? Stamen. That is the male part. Stigma, style, ovary forms the female's parts. Anther and filament form the male parts. What are the other? We say sterile parts of the flower. Again, not involved in any reproductive functions. Are your petals and sepals. Holding the flower is a receptacle or a holder. Yes, androecium, gynoecium is two other names. Gynoecium is a name for carpel. Sorry, Gynoecium. Gynoecium is a name for carpel. Androecium is a name for stamen. Yes, same thing. Okay. Androgens කියලා කියන්නේ male hormones, male related. Androecium or the stamen. Okay. Write down the topic. Structure of a flower. Structure of a flower. Structure of a flower. Quickly draw this quickly. Quickly draw this. Honorable, is it clear shape, right? Do you want me to send a photo? Do you prefer if I had that light? But the light produces a glare, right? So you prefer if we had the light. minutes. You can label these individual ones are what? These individual red color structures are what? Yes, ovules, ne? So that's what we are going to do next. We are going to zoom in on an ovule. People done drawing. Keep some space under the flower to write a description. Under the structure of the flower, keep some space to write a description. Okay, done. The fine people, all good, right? Okay, come to the resource book, page number 146. Resource book, page number 146. We are going to talk about flowering plant life cycle. Right? Always think about what you are thinking. Right? What are you learning right now? Always. Right? At the end of the day, ඔයගොල්ලෝ ගොඩාක් දේවල් ඉගෙනගෙන but you don't know what you have learned about. Right? Whenever you are studying, every 5 minutes at least remind yourself what you are studying. Right? Remind what you're yourself of what you are studying. So when I'm studying pharmacology, ඔහෙම නිකන් drug එකක there's how the drug works and what are the side effects, what are the effects of the drug, what are the microorganisms I can use the drug. ඔහොම then what are the contraindications, pregnancy වල දෙන්න බැරිද ඔහොම පාඩම් කරන් යනවා. අන්ත drug එකේ නම මතක. Right? You understand? පාඩම් කරගෙන යනවා some certain topic. Sometimes you forget the most essential thing. What were you studying about? You got it? You know everything about something, but you don't know what that is. chemistry you are studying elements, right? Element take properties. I don't know the compound it makes. You can't remember what that element is. Have you done inorganic yet? No, right? Not yet, right? Inorganic වල දැන් sulfur වගේ එකක් හම්බුනහම there are so many reactions, so many acid that make so many oxides. ඔහොම වෙනවා. Halogen species ගත්තාම chlorine, fluorine ඔහොම you are going to study each element, all the properties, but you are going to forget what that element is. I mean, just an example, right? So it's important that while you're studying, while you remind yourself what you're studying, otherwise it's not effective. ඒකෙන් තව දෙයක් වෙනවා, you don't lose your attention, right? එක දිගට when you are reading, it becomes something hey background process එකක් වෙනවා නේ. You're just reading some letters. But if you're actively trying to remind yourself, හරි මම පාඩම් කරන්නේ මේක. This is this property of this element. This is why I'm studying this, like that. All right. So this is why what I'm studying. I'm studying this life cycle. This is this phase, right? It's like that. Constantly keep yourself around. Don't let yourself get distracted. It's an exercise that you have to train yourself, right? Okay, right. Anyway, page 146. Highlight. Okay. Sporophyte is the dominant plant. Never done well, right? No longer gametophyte dominance at all. Sporophyte is dominant. Highlight. Gametophyte, short-lived, microscopic, entirely dependent on the sporophyte. Sporophyte produces reproductive structures called flowers. Then the definition of a flower. Specialized shoot with 4 whorls of modified leaves named sepals, petals, stamens, carpels. Highlight. Modified leaves set 4ක් තියෙනවා. Petals, sepals, stamens and carpels. Sepals are usually green, enclose and protect the flower before it opens. මල පිපෙන්න කලින්, before it blooms, the sepals protect. Next, petals are brightly colored in moist flowers. Highlight moist flowers. Aid in attracting pollinators. But wind pollinated flowers generally lack brightly colored parts. Why? What is the basic idea of a flower? It's an advertisement, right? To attract a pollinator. Particularly if you take your petals, visually attractive to attract animals. And also, sometimes there can be aromas, fragrance that is acting as a let's say a chemo attractant, right? It can act as a attraction or like a signal towards the flower, right? So all those are done to attract pollinators. But if it's a wind pollinator, do you need any of those? No. Something else. Some other flowers don't have brightly colored petals. What sort of flowers? මොන වගේ flowers වලටද brightly colored petals ඕනේ නැත්තේ? They do not require brightly colored. Flowers that bloom at night. රැට පිපෙනේවට ඕනේ. Because why? Probably what? The best color to have at night is what? White. That's the most visible color. And also probably pollinators at night already have a night vision. They can use other sensors to navigate. So they probably don't need something colorful for attraction. And also, what is another significant property of night bloomers? So they have a good fragrance usually. Sepalika and Kadupul or Ratapipena, there are some species, right? They are very fragrant, right? That's another form of attraction because Ratapene, okay, the flower you can't see brightly colored flowers, so they are either white or very fragrant or both at the same time. Sepals and petals are sterile floral organs. Highlight. Petals and sepals are sterile floral organs. They do not directly involved in reproduction. That's why they are sterile. Stamens are the microsporophylls. So what do you mean by that? Microsporophylls bear microsporangia. So that's the next step of evolution, right? Microsporophylls have nicely arranged into a what? Filament and anther කියලා. You can't even recognize them as leaves. Ne? Now they are like a මෙහෙම holding structure and a small double, let's say, terminal lobes දෙකක්. We describe them as lobes. That's the fate of microsporophylls. Like very differentiated, no? Very differentiated. Stamen consists of a stalk called filament and a two terminal lobes called anther. Anther and filament highlight. Coming to anther, anther is made up of microsporangia or pollen sacs. We'll talk about the inside of an anther. Inside anther, you have microsporangia. Microsporangia have a special name that we give called pollen sacs. Right? I'll come back there. Keep reading. Containing diploid microspore mother cells which produce haploid microspores by meiosis. Right? Take a So if we draw one of these anther here, right? We draw one of these anther here. They are sort of like this. If you take a cross section of them like this, inside you can see what? Microsporangia. So this is the one of those anther. Inside you can see microsporangia. Right? Microsporangia are going to do what? Produce? Yes, microspores. Microspores are, what's going to happen to microspores? They are going to be enclosed by sporopollenin. Ne? So මෙයාට කියන නම මොකක්ද? Pollen. Singular pollen grain එකක් කියන්න පුළුවන්. Pollen grain. Right? What is the special name that we give to microsporangia? Just told you. Pollen sac. Only flowering plant, huh? Pollen sac. Microsporangium of flowering plants you can call pollen sac. Sometimes MCQ they can ask you what, let's say microspores are produced in the pollen sac. Right? It's a term you need to know. Right? So that is pollen. Male story එක එතනින් නවත්තමු. So what are they saying? Microspores develop into haploid male gametophytes by meiotic division within anther. Okay. So actually in male reproduction, in this flowering plant reproduction, we actually consider the pollen grain don't contain the microspore, but actually it contains a young male gametophyte already. එළියට යන්න කලින් it contains a young male gametophyte, not a microspore actually. Okay. And what is the cell division happening here? Microsporangia to microspore? Meiosis. Right. Okay. Let's take the story there. Come to carpels. Come to carpels. Oh no, wait. There's something additional that you need to know. Microspores develop into the male gametophyte by meiotic division within the anther. And okay, I'll show it. I'll show it here as well. The pollen grain actually has two main cells inside. This is pollen. Inside you have two cells. Okay. One is called the tube cell. The other one is called the generative cell. Tube cell and generative cell. ඔතනින් male story එක. Right? Because in our resource, where were we? Anther is made up of microsporangia, pollen sacs. Did you highlight? Anther is made up of microsporangia, pollen sacs, page number 147. They produce haploid microspores by meiosis. Highlight. Microspores develop into haploid male gametophytes by meiotic division within the anther. Highlight. Within the anther. Very important. Within the anther. A male gametophyte contains two cells, tube cell and generative cell. Highlight. Tube cell and generative cell. These two cells have two separate roles that will come. Okay. Then the definition of a pollen grain is there. Highlight this definition. A male gametophyte with the above two cells. What are the two cells? Tube cell and the generative cells. And the spore wall constitute a pollen grain. They can ask you in the structure to say what are the constituents of a pollen grain in flowering plants. Male gametophyte with tube cell, generative cell covered by the pollen wall is a pollen grain. So that's the entire story of the male stamen. Filament is just a holder. Filament is just a holder of the anther. The filament sort of shape can be very different from flower to flower. Okay. So coming to the female side, carpels are actually megasporophylls. Very differentiated, very modified megasporophylls. Very modified. At the tip of the carpel is a sticky stigma. This is where the pollen grain will be deposited. Receiving. Or a shop enter anything, right? Swollen base of the carpel. This is swollen. Can you see? Enlarged. That is the ovary. Ovary contains one or more ovules. Highlight. Ovary contains one or more ovules. A long slender neck called the style connects the ovary to the stick. Ovary stigma is connected by a neck like tube that is called the style. Okay. Apahu, we are focusing on one ovule. We are going to focus on one ovule. What is going to happen? This is that ovule. What are the parts of an ovule? Protected by integument. What is this interior? What is the interior of the ovary? Sorry, ovule. megasporangium, right? Megasporangium. And what are these 4 red cells? These are megaspores produced by meiosis. මම එක step එකක් skip කරා. Only one will remain functional, right? නේද? So what is the cell division that is going to happen before this? Meiosis. Meiosis of megaspore mother cell is going to produce megaspore haploid, right? What is the orange color thing? That is providing nourishment. That is at this point තාම මොකක්ද ඒක? Megasporangium. Okay, so this is a normal ovule, no? අපි කතා කරපුවා gymnosperms very similar, right? Okay, ovule produces 4 megaspores. We are here by meiosis, only which of which only one becomes functional. Functional megaspore develops into the female gametophyte called the embryo sac, which is a highly reduced microscopic structure. Very reduced, huh? Very reduced. So අපිට ලොකුවට අඳිමු this ovule. So this is the casing of the ovule, integument. What's going to happen is this megaspore is going to become the female gametophyte, which is very reduced, and at the same time it is very interesting, right? Female gametophyte. Female gametophyte is composed of only 7 cells. Cells 7යි තියෙන්නේ. Only 7 cells. Right? What are the 7 cells? You need to know all the 7 cells, huh? There are 3 antipodal cells කියලා 3 දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. 3 antipodal cells. Main role 1 egg cell. Okay. Then there are 2 cells we called as synergids. Right? Synergids කියලා දෙන්නෙක් ඉන්නවා දෙපැත්තෙන්. Synergids, and at the center this is one whole cell, huh? At the center is this whole thing is a big cell, okay? Right? This is the female gametophyte. So these are nuclei. So 7 cells unata, these 7 cells are going to have 8 nuclei, okay? So 3 antipodal cells, 1 nucleus each, 1 2 3. Egg cell nucleus 4. Synergid cells 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. At the center, in the central cell, you are going to have 2 nuclei as well. So this red color structure is the female gametophyte. Let's label each of these cells. මේවයි cells වල නම් ටික ඕනේ, right? These purple color cells are what? Antipodal cells. Antipodal cells. Yes. These are called මේ orange දෙන්න. These are called synergids. Synergid cells කීයක් තියෙනවද? 2යි. Yes. Any question? No. Antipodal cells किया थी ना? 3. How many egg cell? Only one egg. And this thing is a central cell. And these two nuclei are called polar nuclei. Polar nuclei times 2 in the central cell. So what? So I'll write it here. So what is this entire structure? මේ cells 7කිනුයි nucleus 8කිනුයි හැදිච්ච what is this structure? Yes, very reduced. Can what is this? Female gametophyte. This whole thing female gametophyte, or in other words embryo sac. Embryo sac. Right. Let's read the resource. Functional megaspore develops into the female gametophyte called the embryo sac. It is a highly reduced microscopic structure. Highly reduced microscopic structure. ඕනෙක් කියන්න තේරෙනවනේ cells 7කින් නම් හැදිලා තියෙන්නේ, it's very reduced, right? Only 7 cells. So definitely it's a very reduced structure. Right? Mature embryo sac consists of 8 nuclei contained within 7 cells. 3 antipodal, 2 polar nuclei in the central cell, 2 synergids, and 1 egg. Embryo sac. Female gametophyte. This is the what? Mature ovule. Mature ovule. Resinant. Mature ovule. So what is left to be done? Pollen grain is ready. Ovule is ready. You just have to do pollination and then fertilization. Right? Pollination and fertilization. Shall we start drawing up to here? I'm going to erase this later and I'll do the pollination. Okay? So draw up to here, but මෙහෙම space තියාගන්න to draw the next step. I'll erase this labeling and give you the next step. 7 minutes stuck ගාලා. So if I explain again, right? Male side, what's going to happen? Male anther has microsporangia called pollen sacs. In the pollen sacs, meiosis is going to happen and produce microspores. Microspores are going to germinate into the male gametophyte within the pollen sacs. They have two cells, generative cell and tube cell. මේ පැත්තේ inside the ovary you have ovules. Ovules are composed of integument and megasporangium. One of the cells going to divide by meiosis to produce megaspore, because only one is going to remain functional. That megaspore is going to become female gametophyte, which is 7 cell 8 nucleus, very reduced structure. Any questions? Anything super remark? Better than mine, no? Mhm. Nucellus is the remaining megasporangium. Mhm. That provides nourishment to the female gametophyte. Then, so female gametophyte provides nutrition to the embryo. Yes, ඒක තමයි endosperm. It's like, yeah, two nutrient sources. Gametophyte එකට එකයි, then gametophyte එකෙන් මෙහෙට එකයි. That's the complicated part. සමත් වෙන්නේ නැතුද? දෙවෙලා. මාස් දාන්න. higher scores. Later වෙලා. දැන් 2 weeks වගේ. Next week we are going to go straight 3 hours without a break, and then we'll finish. Huh? We'll do all the questions from plant life cycles, then we'll finish. Okay, done. All right, people. What's happening? Okay. You are okay. Yes. Next, what's going to happen? Let's do pollination, nah? Right? What's going to happen in pollination? Pollen deposited on the stigma, because this stigma has a nutrient sugar fluid there, right? This stigma has a sort of nourishing sugary fluid is there, that is going to cause the pollen grain to germinate. The pollen grain is going to germinate and it's going to extend the pollen tube මෙහෙම ගිහිල්ලා. So imagine this is the chosen ovule. This pollen grain is going to extend the pollen tube like this and it's going to go into this ovule. Pollen tube is going to grow through what? Style. Pollen tube is going to grow through the style and go into the ovule through the what? Through the, what is this opening? Micropyle. Micropyle එක through the pollen tube is going to go inside. So I won't draw the full pollen tube, right? This is the pollen tube. It's going to go inside the micropyle, reaching the female gametophyte. Okay. Then what's going to happen? We talked about two cells, huh? Tube cell, generative cell. Okay. This tube cell is the cell that is involved in controlling the generation of this pollen tube. This tube cell is the cell that is controlling generation of this pollen tube. This generative cell is going to divide, actually, so it is actually a sort of mitotic division, but in the haploid form. Okay, it's a type of mitotic division, but happening in the mitotic form. I'll erase this sort of side, right? Generative cell divides into two sperm. Generative cell divides into two sperm. Okay, these two sperms are going to come here. These two sperms are going to come here through the micropyle into the female gametophyte. Okay, what are these two sperms? Non-motile, right? Non-flagellated. Non-flagellated. Because why? Now no tricks, right? Because the pollen tube is going to do its job properly and deliver the sperms directly to the egg. එහෙම වතුරෙන් යන්න එහෙම challenge එකක් නැහැ, right? So no need to be flagellated at all. The sperms will be delivered to the egg by the pollen tube. So, but we have two sperms, right? We have two sperms, right? So what are we going to do with the two sperms? There's only one egg. Neither. One of the sperms is going to combine with this one egg and going to produce what? Zygote, which is normal. One of the sperms is going to combine with one of these polar cells. Sorry, polar nuclei, yeah? One of the polar nuclei in the central cell and produce what? Is remaining female gametophytes සාමාන්‍යයෙන් මොකක්ද වෙන්නේ? In the seed. Endosperm. Here we are going to get an endosperm by the sperm and the polar nuclei combination. So how many polar nuclei are there? 2. That means what? It is මෙතන n plus n plus තව sperm එකේ n එකකුත් එක්ක. The endosperm is triploid, 3n. 3n endosperm you are going to get. Triploid endosperm. Very, very important. In flowering plants seed, the endosperm is triploid. The zygote or the embryo is 2n. Okay. Endosperm is triploid. Clear? I just want to tell this story before we end for today, right? So we'll talk about the rest of fertilization next week. Okay? Any questions? Watch the recording. I'll send it to the group if you don't understand anything. Right? Watch it not tomorrow, maybe day after tomorrow, and see if you understand. Right? Next week we'll finish this with the whole fertilization and development of fruit and dispersal. That's it. Life cycles, questions stick කරා ඉවරයක්. Okay? At this චුට්ටි මේ ටික add කරගන්න. The polar nuclei plus sperm produces endosperm. One egg plus sperm produces 2n zygote. The other end, you can see the other end. Draw the pollen tube also, right? Pollen tube එක මෙහෙම it goes through the micropyle. Pollen tube goes through the micropyle and delivers the sperms into the female gametophyte. The sperms are non-flagellated. All those are MCQ points. The two sperms produced by the generative cell are non-flagellated. Why is that? Because they don't need to be flagellated. Any questions, online people? Next week we are starting with a complete recap of this, but it's going to be of no use if you don't go home and study. මේ week එකේ at least දෙපාරක්වත් resource එක කියුවේ නැත්තම් no use. I'm taking longer because you can see it's not simple, right? And don't think I'm taking time to finish the third lesson. We are finishing the most difficult part of the fourth lesson this together. So fourth lesson is actually going to be much shorter because we have done plant reproduction here. So third lesson එකේ තාම ඉන්නවා වගේ idea එකක් නැහැ. Fourth එක ඉක්මනට ඉවර කරනවා is the real situation. Okay. Probably before April, fourth lesson will be done. Right? Starting animal form after your holidays. Probably in April we'll have another test. Exam එකක් තියමු in April from third and fourth lessons. Okay, you can go. Online people, any questions? Thank you for joining. Okay, thank you for joining. Okay.